Great. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Rebecca speaking here, welcoming you to our webinar session about the field of optometry, the profession itself and admissions basics geared at undergraduate student advisors. We're really happy and excited to have a great group of undergraduate advisors interested in this session this afternoon. We know that optometry is somewhat of a smaller profession and field, and the cohorts of optometry or pre-optometry students coming from individual undergraduate students aren't quite as large as cohorts of, say, students going into dentistry or pharmacy or medicine. We speak with a lot of students from across the country who may have been the only pre-optometry student they knew about at their undergraduate school, or one of very few. So we're happy today to be able to spend a little bit of time with you to speak about the profession of optometry in the event that you don't get a lot of time within your day-to-day careers to get to focus and learn more about this specific profession. So thank you again for being here with us this afternoon. We're going to format this presentation by speaking first about the profession of optometry, and I've invited one of our faculty members, Dr. Lindsay Elkins, to speak to that content first and foremost, and then I'll speak in the later half of the presentation about the admissions process and some of the things that we're looking for from our candidates applying to the program. And we encourage you throughout the session today, if you have questions, to use the system, the GoToWebinar system, and either chat in the chat box or feel free to type your questions into the question and answer box. We'll try our best to monitor that as we go, and certainly any questions we don't get to at the beginning, we'll circle back to at the end. So without any further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Dr. Elkins, and I'll have her introduce herself a little bit, talk about her role here at SCO, and then launch into speak more about the profession of optometry.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Dr. Lindsay Elkins. I am an optometrist and I am a graduate of Southern College of Optometry. I'm extremely excited to be here, and I'm a very big fan of the profession, obviously, and so I will try to stick to the things that Rebecca has planned here, but I am very excited to get to talk about optometry. I do think it's a gem of a profession. I've never regretted it once, and I do think it's a great thing to be able to promote, and I'm very happy that you're able to join us this afternoon. So first of all, what is optometry? A lot of you may already know, but most people consider us to, they know we do glasses, they know we do contact lenses, and they feel like it may stop there. So a lot of our students that are very excited about being in a pre-professional program miss out on the healthcare that we provide. So we are independent healthcare providers. We can have our own practices. We specialize in the diagnosis, treatment, and management of diseases and disorders of the visual system. So that does include glasses and contact lenses, but all the health factors associated with the eye and systemic conditions as well. So for today's Doctors of Optometry, we practice all over the country, over 6,000 communities. We provide nearly 85% of the primary eye care and vision services. We do consider ourselves the primary eye care provider. We recognize that responsible quality care has to involve the patient's total health. So we're part of a healthcare team. We work very closely with managing patients' overall health care. So getting information to their primary care provider, taking thorough histories, and making sure their overall care is maintained. So outside of just glasses, we also offer services related to specialty contact lenses, geriatrics and low vision, vision therapy or rehabilitation. Sometimes vision therapy may help with include sports vision, or it may be a visual efficiency type issue, or rehabilitation can involve post-stroke or traumatic brain injury. We can focus on pediatric vision care and pre- and post-operative care to surgery patients. So a lot of our doctors may work with ophthalmology groups and provide the pre and post care. So again, the primary care provider before they go on to see the specialist potentially. And a lot of times there's a confusion between what's the difference between an optometrist and ophthalmologist. So for optometry, we do have 4 years of optometry school. That's a question we get quite a lot. How many years of school is it? Is it an associate's degree? It is a doctor of optometry degree. You do have to have completed at least 3 years. Most people have a bachelor's degree before they come to optometry school, and it is another 4 years of just optometry school. The 1-year residency for us is optional. Sometimes you'll find a 2-year fellowship as well, but the residency is generally after the 4 years. If you wanted to concentrate your skills in one of those general areas like their rehab or ocular disease or contact lens, you can choose to do a residency year. So that is optional for us. For ophthalmologists, they start their journey in medical school. So they get the general 4 years of medical school. They are required to do residencies, at least 3 years of a residency and then 1 year of internship. So they will already have the MD status before they go into ophthalmology. So they begin to specialize in eyes after their 4 years, and generally they're going to be the specialist. Most of the ophthalmologists, they can be general primary care providers if they choose to, but the vast majority will specialize and become a retinal specialist or corneal surgeon, things along that line. But for optometry, we do the general exam. We can diagnose and treat and manage ocular disorders. This can be prescribing treatments for injuries, prescribing treatments for infections, inflammations, things along those lines, but also monitoring for systemic diseases that manifest in the eye. Being here in Memphis, we see a lot of repercussions from diabetes and hypertension. Sometimes we see these findings in the eye before the person's been diagnosed, because a lot of times they may be asymptomatic. We're very fortunate with a dilated exam or looking through the pupil. It's the one place in the body you can look directly at the blood vessels without having to do something invasive like a catheterization. So a lot of times if a systemic condition affects the blood vessels, we may see manifestations of it not being fully controlled, and we can get them back to their primary care provider or onto a specialist. We work very closely with ophthalmology to handle those cases that need surgery.
Dr. Elkins, we do have one question that came through,
Sure.
Which is, do most optometrists do a residency?
You know, there's actually not enough residencies for every optometrist to perform one. It is, but it's a competitive situation, so not all of them do. I would say, and we would have to look this up, I think it's probably between 20 and 30% of our graduates go on to perform or do a residency. So it is a minority of optometrists, but any of those areas for optometry, we can't say that we specialize in an area. So whereas an ophthalmologist may become a retinal specialist, they've done a fellowship specifically in that area, their residency is specifically in retinal surgery. We don't, even if we do a residency. So I did my residency at a VA hospital, and it was a primary care hospital-based residency. That did not give me any special privileges to manage ocular disease. I still can manage those the same way I would after the 4 years, but it increases my competence level in those areas. And essentially for our students, we want them to be better doctors faster. The residency provides that. And if you wanted to work in a certain mode of practice, like if I wanted to go work at a VA hospital, having done a residency in that area, I'd be more likely to be able to work in that area. There are some people that will do their residency in a refractive surgery co-management situation. That doesn't mean someone who graduates from our 4-year program, when they become licensed, they can still work for a retinal specialist. You don't have to have these residencies necessarily to have those job opportunities, but sometimes it makes you more competitive. For me, it was more of I wanted to be a better doctor faster.
Great, thank you.
Absolutely. So why optometry? For most of us, we find it to be a very rewarding career. We're integral healthcare providers. Vision is one of those things that it's the #1 sense that impacts quality of life. And so it's very meaningful. We can be very impactful on a patient's quality of life. And being in the primary care provider role, we're able to make a personal connection and actually spend more time to really talk through the patient's needs, how they use their vision. So it's very rewarding. So for the person that really wants to be able to make that personal connection, you can make a huge impact in their healthcare you can make a difference. You can be involved in their healthcare, but also have that personal connection. It's very rewarding on that level, but also we get paid well. It is, the average net income is $143,250 for all optometrists. If you do own your own private practice, which is still what the majority of optometrists do, they are their own bosses. And, there's a lot that comes along with that. You have to run your own business, but you are financially rewarded if you're very good at it. Our unemployment rate is very low, so our graduates, they have great success in finding a job. And the job rate is set to, or predicted to, grow over the next few years. We have very good quality of life, work-life balance. Our average work hours, it's less than 40 hours a week. Of course, that's going to vary, but usually you have a lot of flexibility as far as choosing your mode of practice and how you want to work in your life balance with that. Most optometrists are not on call. You may be in a situation where that's not true, but most optometrists are not on call. A lot of times, if there is an emergency situation, they will go to ophthalmology, or you have other options for your patient care for emergency situations. So it does have a lot of the rewarding benefits that people are looking for in the healthcare professions, and not necessarily the same level of downsides for general medicine. But yeah, 49% are self-employed, but there's a lot of different modes of practice. You can work for the government, you can work at a VA hospital, you can work for a corporate entity, you can work for an ophthalmologist, you can work in academics like I do, and I think that's the best of all worlds, but that's me personally. And if you look at a lot of the lists of best professions or least stress professions, best compensation professions, usually optometry is somewhere close there. So it's just got a great balance.
All right, Dr. Elkins, I have a question of my own for you. What piqued your interest when you were an undergraduate student in the field?
Well, for me in undergrad, I went to a very large undergrad, and I had that sense that I did want to do something in the healthcare profession. I was fortunate that my college did have an introduction to healthcare professions class as a freshman course, and I took that class, and optometry actually was not one of the professions that was featured. But I had to write a paper at the end, and I still wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I had a friend whose mother was an optometrist, and I actually had no vision problems. I still don't wear glasses. A lot of our students have their own vision stories that led them to us, but I shadowed with her and got a job actually as an undergraduate in an optometrist's office, and just realized this was very impactful. The people that, when you go into an optometry office, generally people are happy. The optometrists I talked to, they were happy in their daily life, and the patient interactions. A lot of our patients are generally healthy, or you can almost immediately impact their quality of life, which is very rewarding. And every time I investigated a little bit more, it was the one profession that it kept piquing my interest, and the positives far outweighed any negatives. And I couldn't say that for the other professions.
Great, thank you. And then another question from a participant. Are insurance costs generally lower for optometrists than physicians?
I would have to say no in that regard. Depending on the specialty, that may be untrue. Generally, an optometrist or an ophthalmologist, you're going to set your own office visit costs for that, and how insurance reimburses you. We generally use the same codes. So ophthalmology practices may choose to charge more, but a lot of times we use the same Medicare reimbursement codes. So it's not that we get reimbursed less. A lot of the specialists, if they are doing surgeries that we are not performing, that will cost more, and their office visits may cost more in general, but that's a practice decision.
And how about the insurance that you as an optometrist has to have, something similar to malpractice or whatnot?
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, the malpractice, as far as our professional liability insurance, yes, it is much less, because generally the rate of lawsuits is very low for our profession. So most optometrists will hold a policy that's $1 million to $3 million, and it's somewhere around $500 a year for that. So it's very inexpensive. It's not even something I think about on a daily basis, to be quite honest, because it doesn't stand out as a huge expense for us whatsoever.
Great, thank you.
Another thing related to insurance, just since it was brought up, we do work with medical insurance and vision insurance. A lot of people will think if it's that we would only handle things with vision insurance, but if people have medically related conditions with their eyes, we also utilize medical insurance as well as vision insurance. So we're in both of those worlds. So as far as the path to optometry, it is a complete 4-year Doctor of Optometry degree. To get a license in a state, you do need to complete a 4-year degree from a U.S. accredited school. Our curriculum, and I am the director of academic programs, so I'm very familiar with the day-to-day aspects of our curriculum. But our curriculum emphasizes the biological, medical, visual, and optical sciences with the understanding of the healthcare delivery system. So we cover all the basic sciences leading up to what you need to be able to take care of for the actual visual system and to be able to be a functioning healthcare provider. And so this includes didactic lectures, our labs, the clinical rotations, and we have externships where our students go across the country to get more experience. You do have to pass national board examinations through the National Board of Examiners in Optometry. They do have 3 different parts, and depending on what state you want to practice in, each state has a different scope of practice, and each state will have their own state board of optometry that will have their own requirements to get your license, but every state requires some level of the national boards to be passed. And again, the 1-year residency is optional. And once you get your license, each state has their own requirements for continuing education, as most medical professions do. That's going to vary between, usually somewhere between 20 to 40 hours every 2 to 4 years. And as certainly our patient encounters are a huge part of becoming a practitioner, that you want to be able to see patients, and we expect our curriculum to be able to provide that for you so that all of our graduates, once they graduate, are able to become a primary eye care provider. So again, our curriculum provides the lecture courses, our labs, and clinical rotations and externships. And during your 2nd year, you will begin having patient encounters. Now, these are generally going to be vision screenings out in the community. But in the 2nd year, during the 1st year, you'll have already passed all the proficiencies on your basic technical skills that you will use in the 2nd year on those vision screenings. And generally, those vision screenings are going to be on preschoolers through middle schoolers and high schoolers. So you have to adapt your skills finally to work with someone who's not your classmate. But during your 3rd year, you actually begin seeing full patient encounters. So in our clinic, our mainstay clinic, which we're going to show you in just a moment, we usually have 1 staff doctor to 4 interns, and that staff doctor helps the students through. The students provide the comprehensive patient encounter, and the doctor repeats the things that they need to, and they're able to discuss the patient case. So the 3rd year encounters and 4th year, these are generally comprehensive exams on campus. So for our school, we have 1 rotation during your 4th year that you're in our specialty clinics on site. But you spend 2 semesters out of the year on externship. So a lot of people may choose to go where they're from or explore a different area of the country or different practices that specialize in a certain area. Our externships, you have to choose one that's in a private practice and one that we consider an institutional rotation, which is generally a medical center or a military area, something along those lines. But our students, we're very fortunate that we have a very robust patient population here in Memphis, as well as on our extern rotations, and our students get to have a lot of patient care. We need all of our students to be prepared to go straight into patient care, and the best way to do that is with real patient encounters. And as I mentioned, the Eye Center at Southern College of Optometry, it's our mainstay clinic. And through the Eye Center, we do provide primary vision care services. This is what you're generally going to think of from glasses and contact lenses, but also we have a vision therapy clinic and a pediatrics clinic that's going to work on how the eyes work efficiently together, reading function issues, things for sports vision, one of the areas that's growing in that realm is for concussions. There's a lot of things we can do visually to test pre and post for athletes to tell impacts of concussions and providing therapy along those lines. Our primary eye health care clinic, of course, I'm in our adult primary care clinic. We see a ton of eye diseases, manifestations of high blood pressure, diabetes, infections, injuries, and we're very fortunate to have case managers that we can work closely with this management with their primary care providers or provide them specialty connections if they need them. Our subspecialty secondary care, we do have an ocular disease clinic, a specialty contact lens clinic, a clinic for pediatrics, geriatrics and low vision, and developmental vision. We're able to provide care in all of those arenas. We also have some external clinical facilities we're very proud of to provide different patient care settings for our students to experience. Focal Point integrates more technology. We're trying to integrate telehealth measures, trying to be preparing for the healthcare providers of the future. University Eye Care is at the University of Memphis, so we can get more exposure to the healthy college students. And Mobile Eyes is a mobile unit that we can use to follow up at vision screening areas to try to reduce one of the barriers to care in an urban area where poverty may be an obstacle. We can take our mobile unit to provide eye care services, and it has an optical as well off-site.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Elkins. Again, everybody out there in the audience, if you have any questions about the profession of optometry or anything that Dr. Elkins commented on today, please do speak up, don't be shy. But at this point in time, we're going to transition and start speaking more to the admissions process for students interested in optometry. And that's more what I deal with in my daily role here at SCO. I work in the admissions office, and I have conversations daily with students who are interested in optometry to help advise them on what options they have out there, what some of the things are they should be considering as they evaluate their options, and of course, how to build a really strong application for admission into an optometry program. It is a competitive environment out there. It's a smaller profession, but there are a smaller number of programs to choose from. And what you see on this screen here is a list of all of the optometry schools across the country. There are 23 of them. And the information provided about each is information you can find centralized through a really great resource called ASCO, or the Association of Schools and Colleges of Optometry. So at any point in time, if you want to learn more about the field of optometry, and especially the schools that are out there for your pre-optometry students to choose from, I encourage you to check out the ASCO website. They have a lot of really great resources there for advisors and for students alike. But on the screen, you can see some very brief statistics about SCO. In that highlighted row there, you can see our tuition is about $38,000, and that's our annual tuition. It is pretty competitive across the landscape of optometry schools, and we have some regional tuition seats and scholarship seats that I'll talk about in just a minute to make it even more affordable, but that's where we land for our standard tuition amount. You see our average entering credentials in terms of GPA and OAT, which is the optometry admissions test. I'll speak more to those things in just a minute. You can see the number of applications that we receive. This is for the students who entered this fall semester. We received about 760 applications for a total of 135 seats. So again, it is a competitive environment, but we do see the average number of applications per student at about 5. So you can then understand that there is some duplication, that there are students applying to multiple schools. And then lastly, our board passage rate. So Dr. Elkins talked about the fact that boards are something that students must pass in order to be eligible to get licensed and practice. And we're really proud that for the last 2 years that we have a complete data set for our graduates. we have 100% ultimate board passage rate. So, and we're actually the only school either of those 2 years to have had that success. So we're really happy to be able to say that. And on average, we do have pretty strong board passage rates, typically above average and well so. About Southern College of Optometry, a couple key details. First of all, you can see a photo of our campus there. We are in the Memphis Medical District. You can see the tall tower building where our academic facilities, our classes, our labs, etc. are located. And then the eye center that Dr. Elkins talked about is located right next door. It's connected through a little breezeway and it is very large. It is the largest dedicated eye care facility in the country. And across all of our clinical environments, we see about 60,000 patients a year. Another couple things about SCO, we are a private school and we're also a single purpose institution. So there aren't very many single purpose optometry schools left any longer in the country. A lot of them are located or a part of a larger institution. But we only offer the Doctor of Optometry degree program here. So we specialize in that. The large majority of our faculty are ODs themselves, all except one. So they've been through the optometry curriculum at one of the schools. They've taken and passed boards, so on and so forth. And we're very clinically focused. So as, again, Dr. Elkins alluded to, we focus a lot on getting students in front of a lot of different types of patients and a lot of different types of settings to prepare them to be an optometrist upon graduation. And I see a question about, do we accept more residents than out-of-state applicants? Well, this screen shows you just the answer to that question. We actually recruit from across the country, and we have 45 different states represented within our current student body, which is really exciting to us. We like a big and diverse class. And we do have a fair number of Tennessee residents and a fair number from the Southeast region in general. But we get them from across the country, and you might tell from my Midwestern accent that I'm not native to the South. I'm from Michigan originally, so I'm really excited and happy to have quite a few Midwesterners here to have joined me here in Memphis. So yes, so 45 different states represented. We don't necessarily have a quota or anything like that of students from Tennessee to fill in our class. And here's really the, the core information about our entering students, some of the demographics. And I'll speak briefly about GPA and OAT. We talk about this a lot with incoming students. Academics are naturally and obviously one of the most important things that we're evaluating when we're looking at a student's application. And we don't boil students down to just these two numbers alone, but they do inform us quite a bit of who the applicant is. When we're looking at GPA, we are looking at the student's full transcript. We're looking to see how they do from semester to semester. You know, if they had a tough transition their first year, freshman year, but have, improved and have grown as students throughout the rest of their time in undergrad, that makes a big statement. If they have a tough semester for one reason or another, but they bounce back, we understand some of those fluctuations. We do look at course loads. We like to see that students, not necessarily every semester, but have shown in a couple semesters or more that they can balance quite a rigorous academic schedule, 16, 17, 18 credit hours. And it's great too if they can balance that with extracurricular activities. That's another way they can show that they really have grit and determination, and they can balance their schedule wisely and be really committed. 3.6 was the average for the students who entered in fall 2019. We usually average around a 3.5, so it was a tick above. That means we're looking for students with A's and B's, and it's not the end of the world if a student has a C or 2. If they're concerned about having grades that are below A's and B's, they can reach out to us and we will advise them on whether a retake is necessary. Generally, if a student has earned a couple C's, it's not necessarily the first thing that we jump to. Failing grades, D's, those are a little bit more of a concern. Certainly a lot of withdrawals in a student's application, or on their transcript rather. All of those things we look at, but it's one amongst several factors, so it all just depends on the unique student situation and the context that is within. So we look at it as a more well-rounded review of their transcript rather than just boiling it down to a cumulative GPA. We do calculate a prerequisite GPA. You'll see the list of prerequisite courses in another slide or two. And so we'll calculate the average grades that students make in those classes, and something we like to see pretty consistent as well with their cumulative GPA. And then the admissions test that we're currently evaluating test scores for is the OAT, or the optometry admissions test. It is similar in nature to the DAT, not too different from the MCAT, though I can't say that with any kind of intimate knowledge, as I've never advised medical students, but it's pretty similar in nature from what I've learned. It's a test, it covers, there's a reading comprehension section, a quantitative reasoning section, and then it covers some natural sciences. So general biology, general chemistry, organic chemistry, and general physics. Those are the sections. We give a lot of information to students about how they can best prepare for that test, some of the resources that we recommend. We do webinars. We have different ways in which we can get that information to students. So at any point in time, if they're wondering what they can do, have them reach out to us directly. Of course, we're happy to share the information more detailed with you as well if you want to reach out. The test is scored out of 400. The statistical average across all test takers in the country is 300, and our average for fall 2019 students was 336. We usually clock in around a 330. We do not have a hard set minimum with 4 students, but we do effectively have a 300 minimum. So we keep it open in our advertising just in case things in our applicant pool change from year to year, but for the last many years we haven't admitted a student who's had below a 300 academic average. That said, it is a little bit of a sliding scale, so if a student is closer to the bottom end of the competitive range with their OAT, they're closer to 300, it helps to have an above average GPA and vice versa. It's not a hard and fast rule, but that's one way you can advise your students, and the students can think of it themselves. You can see some of the other demographic information listed for you there. One thing I want to draw your attention to is that sentence on the bottom. I see a question coming through too about this. So for the fall 2019 entering class, 100% of those that we admitted did have a bachelor's degree, but it is not a requirement. We only require 90 credit hours, 30 of which need to have been taken at a 4-year school. But it does make an applicant much more competitive to have plans to complete that bachelor's degree. For the candidates, and we only admit maybe 1 or 2 a year at most, for those that are applying as non-degree students, we look for above average academic credentials just to feel more confident that they're ready for the pretty rigorous curriculum that they experience here in optometry school without having had that 4th year of undergraduate studies. So really we're looking for above average GPA, above average OAT for non-degree applicants. It doesn't hurt a student to have to reapply to optometry school. So if you have a strong student who's really interested in applying as a non-degree student for one reason or another and they don't get in, it's really not going to hurt them to have to reapply the next year. I mentioned that we have some funding opportunities for incoming students, and I'll just comment briefly that we have a pretty big endowment here at SCO for students who are entering the program. So the scholarships range anywhere from $1,000 up to $20,000 per student, and that's a per year award. So $10,000 award is a $40,000 grant in total over the 4 years. I bring this to your attention because these are merit-based awards. So we are looking at academic credentials, exposure to the field of optometry, extracurricular activities, leadership, communication skills, well-roundedness, all of those kinds of things are what we're looking at for the award of these scholarships. We don't have a separate application for students to be considered for these awards. We consider everybody coming through the program. And as promised, here is the list of prerequisite courses that we currently require. So a handful of your natural sciences, they're pretty par for the course when it comes to optometry school prerequisites. They don't vary dramatically from one institution to another. A couple differences: we do require a calculus class and statistics class. We require biochemistry. Not all schools do, I believe. We do not require anatomy or physiology. We can accept those classes toward the general biology requirement. Either way, we do recommend them pretty strongly for incoming students. Organic chemistry, too, is also not a requirement currently, but we're hearing more and more from students. We used to say that, it really depends on the institution the student's coming from, whether Organic 2 is really helpful to have taken before taking that optometry admissions test. More and more we're hearing that students say it really is helpful and almost necessary to have Organic 2. So we recommend taking Organic 2, especially and help for preparation for the OAT. And one quick note I'll make too is that we don't require students to have completed 100% of these prerequisite courses by the time that they submit their application. They just need to have plans to finish these by the time they enroll in the program. They have all the way through the summer until they actually come to campus for orientation at the end of August and start classes to finish prereqs. Although naturally, of course, it's important that they take the classes that are related to that OAT test, the general bio, general chem, general physics, and organic chemistries before they plan to take that test. In terms of the application process, there is a centralized CAS system, so OptomCAS for optometry, and all the schools and colleges of optometry across the country do use OptomCAS, making it easier for our applicants. And that's where students are going to submit the bulk of their application information. That's where they're going to fill out all of their academic coursework. They're going to have to send their official transcripts to OptomCAS. They put in all of their extracurricular activities, all of their shadowing experiences, all of their work experiences, leadership activities, service activities as well. And the application cycle starts a year before enrollment, or just over a year. So for students wanting to enroll in fall 2020, the application opened around July 1st of this past summer. So about a year in advance, usually around July 1st. And we do a rolling admissions process. So we begin reviewing applications right away. We invite candidates for interviews as soon as we're able to, and we start admitting students as early as August or September. We continue to admit students until our class is full. We accept applications through March 1st. More often than not, the optometry schools out there are starting their application cycles when OptomCAS opens, but it's the application deadline that varies more frequently between institutions. Ours is March 1st, and we do not tend to fill our class really early on in the cycle, but we tend to get close into February and March. We might start our wait lists around then. So my biggest piece of advice that I always tell students is to apply early on in the application cycle. That enables the students to be considered for admission, for scholarships, before we've given away too many of those seats in those scholarship awards. There is an application fee for OptomCAS, $170 plus $70 for each additional school. They get one school, basically, they choose to apply to through OptomCAS for free, and then they pay for each additional one. Within OptomCAS, they have to write a personal statement, which is pretty straightforward. We ask them to submit 2 recommendation letters. This can vary a little bit from school to school. For us, we ask for 1 recommendation letter from you guys, from their pre-health advisor if they work with one. If they don't work with a pre-health advisor, they can get a letter from a natural science professor, preferably someone that teaches them in chemistry, biology, or physics. We also ask them to submit a letter of recommendation from a doctor of optometry they've either shadowed or that they work for. Then there's that optometry admissions test, and I see one of the questions that popped up in the screen here. I put in the parentheses there, or GRE, and so this is a topic that has recently come up amongst optometry schools, and perhaps some of you have heard about this in one way or another, but about 2 years ago, the question was raised amongst optometry schools whether or not it would be within our best interest to start considering other test scores to try and encourage more people to apply to optometry for various reasons that I really won't get into the exhaustive list for that. So there are schools out there that are starting to consider other tests in place of the OAT. Some schools look at the GRE, some schools look at the MCAT or the DAT, some schools will look at all of these tests. For us here at SCO, we very much prefer the OAT, but we're starting to consider the GRE. And you probably know a little bit more about the GRE. The GRE doesn't test on sciences, so that's why we communicate that it is really our strong preference to receive the OAT. When we talk about, why we're interested in the GRE, it's really in our minds for candidates who have just discovered optometry as a profession, have become interested and already took the GRE for one reason or another. So if a candidate comes to us and says, I'm really interested in the GRE, I switched over from X, Y, or Z field, I've already taken the GRE, can you consider this test score in lieu of the OAT? We will do that. But we are looking for really strong students to feel comfortable about admitting them without seeing those OAT scores, without seeing, those standardized science test scores. So it's a little bit complicated and convoluted and a little bit of a case-by-case basis. My advice to you all is that if you're working with students who know they want to do optometry, to strongly advise them to take the OAT. That's going to help them build the strongest application possible for optometry school. If they're interested in knowing more about the GRE, it is so case by case on whether they can be competitive with just a GRE score alone, that it's within their best interest to contact us and we can advise them on an individual level. With test scores, we do want to see scores that are no longer than that were taken no longer than 2 years ago, and they must be completed by the application deadline, but they could have been completed before the application cycle has begun. It's a test that's administered independently of that OptomCAS application cycle. And then we do have a supplemental application. A lot of schools have a supplemental application, but they vary quite a bit in how they're administered. Some schools invite strong applicants to submit their supplemental application. We want all applicants to submit this form. It's a quick 10 to 15 minute application that exists on our website that students can submit as long as they have their OptomCAS ID, and it allows us to get a little bit of information earlier from the applicant, and then they can take a little bit more time to fill out that OptomCAS application. And allows us to get them into our student information system a little bit more easily. So online, there is a $50 application fee as well for that. And once a student submits an application, OptomCAS does an audit. They compare the student's transcript that was sent as an official form, and they verify that against what the students typed in themselves for their academic coursework in OptomCAS. So once essentially their OptomCAS application processes and verifies, we are eligible to invite them for an interview. We invite them to campus. And as I mentioned earlier, it's a rolling admissions process. We have a half-day interview program here at SCO. The formal interview portion of it is a one-on-one conversation with a faculty member, and it's blind, so closed file. So the faculty member knows nothing about the applicant other than their name and their home state. We hope that allows a really genuine conversation, allows the candidate to really express who they are, why they're interested in optometry, why they think they're qualified, makes it more conversational in nature. Because the closed file nature of that session, we do have an open file session with an admissions counselor to look at OAT scores, to look at classes, to ask questions if there are a lot of withdrawals in the student's transcript or whatever it is. And so between those two things, that's the bulk of our interview day, but the students do go on a tour. They do hear more about housing and financial aid and other topics we deem important. Once they finish the interview, we do let them know pretty quickly whether or not they've been admitted to the program. In fact, we try to let them know within about a week's time, 1 to 2 weeks at most. So it is a pretty quick turnaround. And once they've been admitted, we do give them time to consider whether they want to enroll at SCO or if they want to enroll elsewhere. You can see the schedule that we have set up in the bottom corner there. The earlier that an applicant applies and comes through the application process, the more time we're able to allow them to make that important decision. We don't want to try and push them into a decision by giving them a really tight turnaround in terms of letting us know. We want them to go to their interviews they have scheduled and really make a decision on the best school for them without feeling that time pressure. And so as we come to a close here, I've mentioned a lot of these tips for competitive applicants to keep in mind applying early. I mentioned the importance of extracurriculars in terms of demonstrating that the student is passionate, has determination, can balance a schedule, pursues their interests, and so forth. So we really like to see the extent of what they're involved in as undergraduate students in terms of supporting documentation in their file. The OAT they can take early. A couple notes about that is we do admit students that have taken the OAT more than once. So I want to say about 25% of the students we admit have taken it more than once. And there is a wait period in between test attempts. So if a student takes the test and wants to retake it, they have to wait 90 days. So that's one of the biggest reasons why we want them to take that test early in case they want a chance to take it again. When a student submits their application, if it's not quite competitive enough for an initial interview invitation right off the bat, we give them the opportunity to make improvements, to retake the OAT, to get more shadowing, whatever it is they need to do. We're not going to deny their application right off the bat so they can take the time that they need, but allowing themselves time to take the OAT a second time can be a really wise thing to do. I mentioned gaining exposure to the field of optometry, so we really encourage students to get out there and shadow. And I'm sure this is something that you tell your students to do all the time. It can be a really great experience and really help to confirm whether optometry is what they thought it is and whether it is something they see themselves doing or not. Shadowing is one of the things I hear more often than not that really confirmed within an applicant's mind and heart that this was the profession for them. So we encourage exposure. It could be shadowing, it could be work, it could be interning, whatever it is, whatever they can do to see what optometry is like on a daily basis. You know, talking to optometrists is a really great thing to do. What we really recommend is at least 30 to 45 hours of shadowing or work. Exposure in whatever way that is for the student. We also recommend that they experience different settings. So we ideally like to see 2 or 3 different settings that they've gained exposure within, different modes of practice ideally. We have a strong commitment to service here at SCO, so we like to see that in our applicants. You know, our students are required to do service. I mean, service is one of the defining characteristics of the profession, you know, giving back to the community, caring for the community. So we like to see that caring commitment within our applicants. And then, of course, we encourage applicants to ask lots and lots of questions. They can reach out to me anytime. The key here, as I'm sure you understand, is for the applicants to be professional in their communication, to, you know, make sure they're being on top of it, that they're reading things that we're sending them, they're looking at our website. They're not asking questions that can simply be answered on our website. So, you know, they can start their professional skills early and that's going to benefit them. But of course, any questions they have along the way, they don't need to be shy. So with that, I have our contact information here. My name and email address there on the bottom. We have all the social media accounts. We're always happy to give you as advisors more information too. If there's things you'd like to learn more about, if you'd like to receive materials from SCO, anything that we can help you with in terms of learning more about optometry and being able to better advise your pre-optometry students, it would be a delight for us to be able to help you in that regard. So please do save our contact information and reach out with any questions that you have. We do a webinar series for prospective students as well. We comment on all sorts of different topics. Dr. Elkins has helped me a couple times before with a webinar about the curriculum for optometry school. We do webinars about the application process, about the interview day, about a day in the life of an optometry student. So that's a really great resource I encourage you to inform your prospective students about. With that, that really brings us to the end here. It doesn't look like I'm just double checking this list of questions to see if anything else has popped up. I do see one question about retaking prereqs, and if a student retakes the course, it's definitely not a deal breaker. We have students who retake courses all the time. We might ask them, ultimately the higher grade, the more recent grade is more important to us. We want to see that they are able to achieve success in that topic. They have the knowledge they need from that topic. But if they maybe failed a class or had a low grade and turned around and made a B or an A, that's important to us, but we might ask them about that during the counseling session just to see what made a difference in their understanding of that topic. So definitely not a deal breaker. I see a question about regional or state agreements. I realized that I talked about the scholarship program, but didn't quite mention our regional tuition program. We do have what we call contract seats with, I think it's 9 different states in the region, and we do offer through those contracts discounted tuition for a certain number of students from those seats. So we don't offer in-state tuition, but we do have regional tuition for students. Let's see if I can get the full list. So South Carolina, Georgia, Mississippi, Kentucky, Kansas, West Virginia, Tennessee, obviously. There's a couple others that I might have forgotten, but obviously all the information's on our website. Any other questions out there? Give it a second or two. All right. Well, thank you once again for tuning in. A big thank you to Dr. Elkins for her involvement in today's session. Please keep us in mind with any questions you have, and feel free to send your pre-optometry students our way with their questions as well. Hope you all have a great afternoon.